Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking a bit about how to actually use the microscope. So for our class, we're only going to be worried about the 4x, the 10x, and the 40x lens. We won't need to go to 100x, so we should not be using this really long lens that has the white line on it or it says 100x on it. But really, when it comes to using the microscope and just kind of going through the basic parts to it, again, some of the big things we need to worry about, again, is our coarse adjustment knob and our fine adjustment knob, as well as our stage controls right here. So whenever you start using the microscope should be in the lowest setting, meaning that you can't lower our stage any more than where it's already at. And once you're ready to go, you're going to find the appropriate slide that you're going to be looking at. We're going to start out by looking at a letter E. And just real fast, everybody can see in this image here, when we look at this letter E, it does start out, or at least the way that it is in the slide, it is reversed and it's inverted. So just kind of keep that in mind when we see it under the microscope. But when it comes to loading on your slide, you're going to have your little stage clip, and you just want to open up the stage clip by pushing on it. Then you want your slide to sit in here, kind of like in this image right here. When you are kind of in this place and you're ready to go to actually look at what's on your sample, again, if we're looking down the microscope, kind of like how my setup is here with the camera, you're not going to be able to see anything at this point. So a trick that you can use in order to get into focus, and you can only do this in the 4x, is literally just take your coarse adjustment knob and crank it all the way back so that the microscope stage goes all the way to the top. I don't know if you guys can hear that clicking, but once you get to that clicking, it means you went too far. So let's take a look. Looks like our little letter E is in there, and if I slowly move it a bit backwards, I can now get my letter E into focus. I can then use my stage controls to actually look at and find where my letter E is. Now, if you're looking at your sample and you don't see anything right off the bat, it's always good to look straight down on the microscope slide, not down the microscope lens, just look straight down on the slide. Make sure that whatever it is you're supposed to be looking at is in the light. If it's not in the light, you're looking at some other part of the slide that doesn't have anything on it. So make sure that, again, that center either of the square or circle, whichever one it is, that it's inside of that light. Now, of course, kind of going back to our letter E. When we're looking at it here, again, the E looks correct. And that's because all images are inverted and flipped when we look at them through the microscope. So it's just a little thing to pay attention to there. Another thing that you're going to want to pay attention to is that if we have a field of view coming down, and this is our slide, if I move my slide forward, it looks like I'm going backwards. And if I move my slide backwards, it looks like I'm going forward. So whenever you're moving the slide, you're actually moving it the opposite direction of what you see. So that's just another little thing to keep in mind. Now, as you guys are going through and you're determining the different sizes of the objects and the different organisms that we're looking at, you're required to go to the highest magnification where you can see the object. So our letter E is within our field of view. Because of that, we would then go to the next lens. So in this case here, I would turn it down to my 10x lens, get it into focus, and at this point I only use the fine adjustment knob, which is the little part to it here. Now that it's in focus, it's still within my field of view, so I would then move on to my 40x lens. And as I'm now looking at it in my 40x lens, if I try to get it kind of in the middle, it's too big. And because it's too big, I go backwards. So back to my 10x lens, that's about as magnified as I can get it without it getting too big. So get it back into a nice focus, and now what I can do to help calculate out my size is I can put it right at the edge of my field of view. When it's at that edge of the field of view, it just helps you see how many times it's going to fit within that field of view, and then using your diameters across your field of view, you can then calculate out a rough size in millimeters for how big these different objects are. Now, some of our objects are going to be pretty easy to spot, kind of like the letter E. We're going to have a couple of bugs that we're going to be looking at, some fleas and stuff like that. But as you're continuing, as you're moving through, make sure that you always go back to the 4 before you take off your slide. And since we're already in focus, we might as well just leave the the stage at the height that it's at, and we'll then move on to our next one. In this case here, we're going to be looking at a paramecium, and our paramecium is going to be quite a bit smaller. So in this case here, again, those little purple specks are what we're looking at. And as I'm going through again, it looks pretty focused on our 4x here. I can then go ahead and move down to my 10x. We'll try to single out one of them and get it right by our little pointer here. So see if we can get that guy into a bit more focus. And we can then go down to the 40x lens. Move it back so the pointer's right by it. Try to get him into focus a bit better. So that's just, again, a little paramecium, but certain items you are going to have to go to the 40x lens just to be able to see them and be able to see them well. Again, then when it comes to calculating out your field of view, you can put it kind of at the edge of your field of view, determine how many times it fits across it, and divide that into the diameter for a specific field of view. Whenever you're done and you've looked at all of the different items under the microscope, again, make sure you go back to your 4x lens. Make sure you take off the slide and you put it in the appropriate tray where it goes. Lower the stage all the way back down so it is ready for the next person. After that, again, you can go ahead and turn off your microscope and then go ahead and put it up. Hey again, I forgot to mention a couple things in the last video, so I'll just add them in real fast here. When we're looking at stuff under the microscope, most of the times the items that we're going to be looking at are going to have color to them. So if you see anything that looks, one, like perfect circles or bubbles, that's probably not going to be what you're looking for. If it's completely black or translucent, it can be, but most likely it's not going to be the thing we're looking for. They're normally like greens and purples and blues and things like that. Also, if you see something that looks like this item right here in this image, you're not looking at anything, you're looking at the little piece of round glass that sits around our sample. So make sure again that when you're looking at stuff that you look at all these different items that have colors to them. But that should cover what we need to know about using the microscope.